When I moved into that tiny two-bedroom apartment in downtown Austin, I had nothing but a backpack, a second-hand laptop, and a dream so fragile it felt embarrassing to say out loud. My name's Jason Kim, and 3 years ago I was just another guy working night shifts at a taco joint and scribbling code on coffee-stained napkins during lunch breaks. My roommate, Daniel, was everything I wasn't. Confident, popular, loud. He worked in sales for a rising SaaS company, always dressed in expensive blazers, flashing his Apple Watch like a badge of honor. We split the rent evenly, though I barely scraped together my half most months. He'd throw parties every Friday, the kind that left our tiny kitchen smelling like cheap vodka and regret for days. From the very beginning, Daniel made it clear he thought I was wasting my life. Still working on that Uber for laundromats or whatever it is? He'd laugh in front of guests. I told him it wasn't about laundry anymore. It had evolved into a smart logistics platform for small local services. His eyes glazed over every time I tried to explain. He called it Jason's digital delusion. I laughed it off. But every night after the noise died down, I'd sit alone on the worn couch in our living room, plugging away at my prototype. I didn't have capital, I didn't have a team, but I had a problem I wanted to solve, and I wasn't waiting for someone to validate it. Then came the day I found out the job I relied on for rent was cutting hours. I stood in the kitchen, holding my phone, silent. Daniel strolled in, shirtless, sipping green juice. "You look like someone just told you they canceled Comic-Con," he smirked. I told him I'd figure it out. I always did. The truth? I was scared. I was 27, broke, and holding on to something nobody believed in, not even my own parents. My dad had once said, "You should have gone into finance, you're not Zuckerberg." But I couldn't let go of the idea, it kept me awake. This vision of people booking local services in under 60 seconds, verified and insured, with AI that predicted demand and helped small businesses grow. I pitched it to a friend from college who'd recently sold a startup. He agreed to look at it, just look. That was all I had to hold on to. One evening, Daniel came home to find me still coding at 1 a.m. He dropped his gym bag, stared at me, and said loud enough for his date to hear, "Can someone please tell my roommate it's time to grow up and get a real job?" His date laughed. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling thinking, maybe he was right. Maybe I was just a broke guy clinging to a fantasy. But then I checked my inbox at 3:42 a.m. subject line. "Let's talk. I think you're onto something." From Ravi Desai, the friend, the investor. That moment changed everything. Not because I suddenly had money or a partner, but because for the first time someone other than me said, "You're not crazy." And I was ready to prove it. I wish I could tell you things took off like a rocket after Ravi's email. They didn't. But what I got that night was momentum, something I hadn't felt in years. We met that week at a noisy cafe halfway between downtown and the tech district. I was nervous. Ravi looked the same. Slick hair, crisp shirt, the calm kind of confidence that came from having already made his millions. He listened while I explained my platform. A smart system that connected clients with vetted local service providers in real time. Plumbers, movers, mechanics, even last-minute event staff. He didn't interrupt once, just nodded, eyes steady. When I finished, he leaned back, crossed his arms, and said, "You've thought this through." I told him I'd been building and testing it solo for over a year. Scraping data, coding back-end APIs, even hired 3 contractors off Fiverr to simulate scale. He smiled. "I'll give you $20,000 for a 10% stake. But if I like what I see in 6 months, I'll go in bigger." I left that cafe with my hands shaking. That money wouldn't make me rich, but it meant I could eat. I could stop taking those exhausting night shifts. I could finally buy hosting servers that didn't crash every time a new user signed up. When I told Daniel, he laughed. "Wow, 20 grand? So you're rich now?" He sneered. "Let me guess, you'll be in Forbes next week." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned the guest bedroom into an office. I covered the walls in sticky notes and whiteboard sheets. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes more. No more parties, no more Friday nights, just growth. And it started to happen. Slowly at first. One local plumbing company signed on, then a landscaping business, then an independent moving crew. I gave them free service credits in exchange for testimonials and referrals. We called the platform Node Connect. 2 months later, we had 200+ users. Daniel stopped mocking me as loudly. He still rolled his eyes, but kept quiet when I had Zoom calls or developer meetings. One time, he saw me with 2 laptops open and 3 people on screen, and he muttered, "Guess this is real now, huh?" I didn't even look up. Then came our first press article, small, local tech blog. Nothing huge, but it called Node Connect the most exciting on-demand tool for blue-collar business owners. That same night, I overheard Daniel on the phone. "Yeah, Jason's still doing that startup thing. No, I think he's actually getting some traction. I know, crazy, right?" By the 6th month, Ravi was back on a call with me. "I've got 3 investors who want in. I'll match whatever they bring, but I want to lead the round. You ready to grow?" I had tears in my eyes, not because of the money, but because for the first time in my life, someone wasn't just believing in my vision. They were betting real chips on it. We closed a seed round for $400,000. I hired 2 developers and an operations lead. We rented a small co-working space near East 6th. Daniel saw the branded box of team sweatshirts arrive at the apartment one evening. He held one up and read it. Node Connect, built for the hands that build the world. He chuckled, tossing it back into the box. But I saw something new in his face. Not mockery, not disdain, jealousy. He didn't say it, but I felt it, and I was just getting started. There's a moment in every journey when the silence around you changes. Not because people start cheering, but because they finally stop laughing. For me, that moment came 2 weeks after we launched our first regional partnership. A mid-sized city in Texas, El Paso, had agreed to pilot Node Connect with their local chamber of commerce. We offered free service onboarding and exclusive scheduling features for small business owners. Within 10 days, 67 vendors signed up. I sat in my tiny home office, what used to be the guest bedroom, watching the dashboard light up with new users. Daniel walked by with a protein shake and casually glanced at my screen. "That real time?" I nodded. He nodded back, then walked away. He didn't say a word, but that one glance, it said everything. My startup, Jason's Digital Delusion, was starting to look like something real, something he couldn't ignore anymore. By month 7, I was on a panel at a local tech conference. Small event, maybe 100 people, but I was introduced as founder and CEO of Node Connect, a rising logistics disruptor for local services. When I walked off stage, 2 students asked to take a picture with me. Me, the guy who was mocked for years. The guy who couldn't afford Wi-Fi 3 years ago without splitting it with 3 neighbors. I walked back to the apartment that night, and Daniel was sitting on the couch watching sports. He looked up and asked, "So, how was your nerd convention?" I told him we closed a new beta partnership. "Cool," he said, sipping beer. "Guess the little side project isn't so little anymore." That was the closest he ever got to a compliment. But I didn't need his approval. I wasn't chasing it anymore. Then something changed. The startup world is fast, brutal, and momentum-driven. We hired 3 more developers and brought on a part-time marketing coordinator. Our traction was outpacing what I ever imagined. But inside the apartment, the tension grew. Daniel started staying home more. I overheard phone calls that didn't sound like celebration. One night, I got up for water at 2 a.m. and found him sitting in the kitchen in the dark, typing on his phone. "Everything okay?" I asked. He flinched, then nodded, trying to act casual. "Yeah, just dealing with some stuff at work." Turns out, Daniel's company had downsized. 3 months later, he was let go. He didn't tell me directly. I found out when he came home early one afternoon, slamming the door and yelling at someone over Bluetooth. I pieced it together, and slowly, the tables turned. He used to throw jabs about my startup. Now, he was quiet during the day, applying to jobs. I'd walk out of a Zoom meeting with our investors, and he'd be hunched over the coffee table, reworking his resume for the 3rd time. The dynamic had shifted, and he felt it. One day, I walked into the kitchen and he said it, just like that. "Hey, listen, would you ever, need someone for sales or ops? I know the space. I could help you guys scale." I paused, looked at him. "You want to work at Node Connect?" "I mean, yeah, if you're hiring." He shrugged, pretending not to care. Figured I'd ask. I smiled. "We're not hiring right now?" He looked down, nodded, said, "Right. Yeah, cool, thought I'd ask." But the truth, we were hiring. I just didn't want him. Not because of revenge, not because of pride, but because I had built this company from the ground up without his belief, his support, or even his basic respect. And now that it was finally growing, I knew exactly what kind of team I wanted beside me. People who never laughed when I said I had a dream. After Daniel asked about the job and I gave him that quiet, "We're not hiring," things between us got awkward. Not hostile, but quiet, uncertain, weird. He started tiptoeing around me, stopped blaring his music. No more side comments. He even cleaned his dishes, which, for him, was borderline revolutionary. I think he expected me to forget all the times he laughed, the jokes he made at my expense, the way he'd dismiss me in front of his friends like I was just a freeloader with a laptop and delusion. But I remembered. Every night I coded in that freezing living room, wrapped in a hoodie because the heating bill was overdue, while he and his crowd laughed about the next Jeff Bezos in the room. Every time I had to explain to people at his parties that yes, Node Connect was a real thing. And no, I wasn't just doing Uber for dog walkers. I remembered it all. And I also remembered who never made fun of me. Like my friend Erin from college, she was one of the first beta testers who helped me refine the UI. Or my old manager at the taco shop, who told me, "You're going to do something big, kid," and meant it. Those people? They believed in me before there was anything to believe in. I started surrounding myself with more of them. At this point, I was spending most of my time either at the co-working space or on flights. We'd landed a contract in Denver and were pitching a major gig with a home services franchise in Phoenix. Life was moving fast. Daniel, he was moving nowhere. One afternoon, I got back to the apartment and saw him standing in front of the fridge, holding it open, just staring at the empty shelves. We hadn't spoken much in days. But that day, he broke the silence. "Hey, do you think you could spot me for rent this month?" he asked, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I stood there, stunned for a moment. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Just this month. I'm good for it next one." Promise I looked around. Same apartment. Same couch where I used to sleep because I didn't have a bed. Same chipped tile floors we used to joke about fixing. But this time, the power wasn't in his hands. It was in mine. "I'm not trying to be a jerk," I said slowly, "but No, I can't spot you. I built something from nothing. You laughed at it. You never supported it. And now, when it's working, you want help? He looked wounded. Dude, I didn't mean to. I cut him off. I remember everything you meant, every smirk, every time you told me to give it up. I made peace with that, but you don't get to come back and ask for a handout just because things turned around. He nodded again, said nothing. And for the first time, I think he understood. Respect isn't owed, it's earned. That night, I got dinner alone. I sat at a quiet sushi spot near the office, watching our real-time usage tracker cross 10,000 monthly active users. It was surreal. I texted Erin, we hit 10K. Still feels fake. She replied instantly, it's not. You made it real. And I thought back to every moment I wanted to quit. Every time I almost did. The nights I cried into my pillow, doubting everything. The mornings I put on a brave face anyway. This wasn't luck, this was grit. And I wasn't letting anyone rewrite the story. Especially not someone who never read the first chapters. The turning point didn't come with fireworks or viral news. It came quietly, in the form of a deal memo sitting in my inbox on a rainy Tuesday morning. A national hardware chain wanted to use Node Connect to book certified local service providers for installations and in-home consultations. If it went through, it would triple our monthly volume overnight. I sat there staring at the PDF, soaking wet from the morning rain, and grinning like a maniac. It was real. They wanted us. They chose my company. I forwarded the memo to Ravi, who called me within minutes. Jason, he said, calm but clearly buzzing. This is it. This is the crack in the wall. We set up a meeting for the following week to finalize the contract. I didn't sleep for 3 days straight. Working, prepping, fixing small bugs, and making sure our systems wouldn't collapse under the surge. And then the call came. They signed. I ran out of the co-working space and just stood on the sidewalk in the rain. No umbrella, just me, soaked again, but this time smiling, victorious, untouchable. I had built something that mattered. That night, back at the apartment, Daniel was watching TV. I dropped my keys on the counter, opened the fridge, and pulled out a celebratory soda. Could have been champagne, but I didn't need it. Victory tasted good enough on its own. He glanced over. Everything good? I nodded. Actually, yeah, really good. He didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Because some wins are personal. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him, Daniel. Hey man, congrats on everything. I know I wasn't always the nicest roommate, and maybe I was a little harsh about your startup. But I respect the hustle, really. If you ever do have something open, let me know. Would love a chance. I stared at the message, and then I locked my phone and slid it face down on the table. No reply. Not out of pettiness, but because some bridges don't need to be burned. They just don't need to be crossed again. The moment I stopped needing his validation, that was the moment I grew past him. Our lease was up in 2 months, and I had already decided to move. I toured a new condo, one with real sunlight, quiet walls, and no stale protein shake smells lingering in the air. I signed the paperwork that week. When I told Daniel I was moving out, he barely reacted. Yeah, makes sense, he muttered. You're kind of outgrowing this place. He didn't know the half of it. I wasn't just outgrowing the apartment. I had outgrown the version of myself that once sat on that beat-up couch, hoping the world would just see me. Now, the world knew me, because I built something that spoke louder than I ever could. I moved out in silence, no farewell drinks, no handshake, just a nod as I shut the door behind me one last time. The same door I once opened with nothing but a laptop and a dream. The new condo had hardwood floors, real granite countertops, and a view that reminded me every morning how far I'd come. It wasn't lavish, nothing like the penthouses I once dreamed about, but it was mine. Paid in full from a founder's draw, not a loan. I moved in with just a few boxes and one promise to myself: no more apologizing for dreaming big. Within weeks, Node Connect exploded. That national hardware partnership? It opened the floodgates. Suddenly, we were onboarding new service providers by the hundreds: plumbers in Phoenix, HVAC techs in Salt Lake, handymen in Charlotte. Word spread fast in the blue-collar networks. We weren't just a convenience anymore. We were infrastructure. Investors started calling us, not the other way around. A VC firm from New York flew in just to have lunch with me. They said things like scalable value, category leader, and exit potential. It was flattering, but I wasn't thinking about exits. I was thinking about impact. Meanwhile, my team grew. We were 12 full-time now. A marketing lead, 2 sales guys, 4 engineers, and a product manager who used to work at Yelp. Everyone was remote, but we did weekly video check-ins and once-a-month work retreats. We weren't just building a company. We were building belief. Inside our users, our team, and honestly, inside me. Then came a message I didn't expect. Daniel, again, this time through LinkedIn. "Hey Jason, I saw the Forbes piece. Man, you really did it. Congrats, seriously. I'm between roles right now. Would love to catch up over coffee if you've got time." I let the message sit. He was always good at finding people on their way up. I scrolled down his profile. His most recent job ended 4 months ago. 2 consulting gigs that looked suspiciously like filler. His endorsements were sparse. His energy? Desperate? 3 years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to make peace, to show I was the bigger person. But now I had nothing to prove. That coffee invite never got a reply, because timing matters. So does character. I don't judge him for struggling. Everyone stumbles. But Daniel didn't just doubt me. He mocked me, undermined me, dismissed my dream to boost his own ego. And when the power shifted, so did his tone. I don't hold grudges, but I do remember. I remember who helped me when I had nothing, and who laughed when I said, "One day this will be real." That day had come. We crossed 50,000 users, a milestone that got us another write-up, TechCrunch this time. The headline read, "Node Connect quietly builds the future of local services, and no one's laughing now." I read it twice, then sent a screenshot to my old manager at the taco shop. She texted back, "Told you, you're going to do something big, kid." That night, I sat alone on my balcony, looking out over the city I once felt so small in. I thought about the couch, the jokes, the late nights, the cheap takeout, the ignored calls to Mom when I couldn't make rent. And I realized something. Success doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't make the past disappear, but it does give it meaning. Every bruise, every jab, every lonely night built the armor I wear now, not to shield me, but to remind me I survived. And I built something beautiful out of it. It had been almost a year since I'd last seen Daniel face to face. I'd moved on. My life had changed. Node Connect wasn't a scrappy idea anymore. It was now in 6 states, onboarding 2,000 users a week. We were preparing for Series A funding, and I was in talks with a major logistics firm to license our back-end routing algorithm. Everything was moving fast, but nothing prepared me for what happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon when the building concierge buzzed up and said, "You have a visitor." I wasn't expecting anyone. I stepped into the lobby and there he was. Daniel, same old slouch. Slightly older, dressed decently, but not sharp. Not the Daniel I remembered from our apartment days with his tailored jackets and obnoxiously loud cologne. He looked up at me like he didn't quite know how to start. "Hey, man," he said. as if we were still roommates sharing cold pizza. Sorry to just show up. I tried messaging you, but I figured it was worth asking in person. I didn't say anything. I just waited. He rubbed the back of his neck, nervous now. Look, I've been going through some stuff. You know how it is. Market's rough, people downsizing. I really need a job. I know I messed things up between us, but I'm not here for charity. I'll work hard. I swear, I exhaled slowly, leaning against the wall, and suddenly I was back in that old apartment, me on the couch, him laughing with his friends, calling my idea a digital paper cut. I looked him straight in the eye. We are hiring now, I said. His face lit up instantly. Seriously? But not you, I said firmly. The light disappeared from his face. He looked stunned, like the words didn't compute. I'm not trying to be cruel, I said, my voice steady. But this company, this team, we built it on support, not sarcasm. We built it on belief, not mockery. You had a front row seat to this journey and you chose to laugh, over and over. He opened his mouth to speak, but I kept going. I don't hate you, Daniel. I don't even dislike you. But I know who you were when it mattered most. And you don't get to rewrite that just because the outcome's different now. The silence between us was thick. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. Fair enough, he muttered. I deserved that. I gave a small nod. Good luck out there. And with that, I turned and walked back toward the elevator, hearing the rain start again outside. When I got back upstairs, I looked out the window and watched him disappear into the city streets. That moment wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about closure. It was about choice. I had finally become the kind of man who didn't need to hold on to resentment, just boundaries. That's what success taught me. Not everyone from your past deserves a seat at your future. Later that night, I got an email from one of our new hires. She was a single mom from San Antonio who joined our support team. She wrote, "Thank you for giving me a shot. I know I'm not from a fancy background, but I promise I won't let you down." I smiled reading it, because that's who we were building Node Connect for. Not for those who once laughed at the dream, but for those who still believe in building something better. Section 8, the founder's seat, and the words I finally said aloud. 2 weeks after Daniel showed up at my door, I was standing on stage at a regional founders summit. Bright lights, a sea of chairs, tech badges flashing in every row. My name, Jason Kim, was on the big screen behind me, under the words, Keynote, from couch to CEO, building when no one believes in you. I held the mic, took a slow breath, and looked out at the faces watching me. Young builders, hopeful eyes, hands gripping notebooks and coffee cups. People who were me just a few years ago. I started with a story. I used to work on a broken laptop in a cramped apartment with a roommate who laughed every time I mentioned my stupid startup. He told me it would never work, that I should give up and get a real job. A soft ripple of sympathetic laughter moved through the room. I smiled, not bitterly, just knowingly. But I kept going, not because I was sure I'd succeed, but because I couldn't live with quitting something I believed in. And now, that same startup employs over 40 people, supports hundreds of small businesses, and just crossed 1 million bookings. Applause. Real, genuine, earned applause. I looked down for a moment, hands tightening around the mic. I didn't build this to prove him wrong. I built it to prove myself right. And that made all the difference. After the keynote, dozens of people came up to shake my hand. A 19-year-old from El Paso asked for a photo and said, "My parents told me I'm wasting my time on my app. I needed this today." I told him to keep building. Quietly, relentlessly, like his future depended on it, because it probably does. Later that night, I sat alone in my new office, floor-to-ceiling windows, soft ambient lighting, a framed photo of our original team retreat on the bookshelf behind me. I opened my laptop to check our live data feed. 97,432 users. I just stared at the number, and something in my chest swelled, not pride, not even joy, gratitude. I thought about my dad, how he used to say I wasn't Zuckerberg material. He'd called recently, said he was proud of me, that he tells his coworkers I'm a CEO now. Funny how time can change a tone. And yet, I wasn't doing this for their approval anymore. I had outgrown that need. Then I opened my inbox and saw another unread message. Subject: You really did it. Respect from Daniel. No ask this time, no fake humility, just those 5 words. I didn't reply, but for the first time, I felt okay with it. Genuinely okay. Because here's the truth. We spend so much of our lives begging the wrong people to see our worth, to understand our fire, to stop laughing when we try to fly. But the moment we stop asking and start doing, that's when everything changes. They don't laugh anymore, they watch, they wonder, and some of them, when it's too late, try to come back. But by then, you're too far ahead and they're just noise in the distance. Hi, I'm Jason Kim. They once called my dream stupid. Now they call it a company, and I call it mine.